I'm here to talk to you about integrating your shadow and light self. So, if you've ever heard of people talking about your subconscious mind and talking about your shadow and light self, a lot of people like to say love and light. Some people, talk about your darker self or your shadow self. So, what we want to talk about though is going into your light self and what that's about. Your light self, or what I like to call your etheric mask, which is how you present yourself in the world on an everyday basis based off of how you're programming your subconscious mind. Your etheric mask represents how you look, of course, physically, because there's two polarities, extreme polarities in existence in the universe, which is pure consciousness, which is pure energy. And then there is the realm of material or material matter or matter in existence. So when we get into matter in existence, everything has a physical or visual appearance here. When we talk about our light self, all this is how you present yourself to the world on an everyday basis. For everybody else, you have a different etheric mask on how you present yourself. And the reason for this is everybody's light self is always questionable, and you're always doing the inner work in order to get it to where you want it to be, where you integrate it. And the reason why it's always questionable or different is because it's based off of the laws, and it's based off the rules and regulations of your environment. It's based off of what's acceptable in the social norms for society. So everybody's light self always need work, and you're always going into your shadow or your subconscious mind in order to integrate and smooth out and repair these things for that to happen. So when we go into what our shadow self is, all that is your subconscious mind and things you've been programmed with since you've been young, and you've been able to, analyze things, whether you've had traumatic experiences, repetition, those things programmed your mind, symbols, all these visual type of things that were programmed into your subconscious mind. That's what your shadow self is. When we talk about the word integration, all integration is taking pieces of something and blending it into a whole. So when I talk about integrating your shadow and light self, this is something that is continuous throughout the rest of your life. It never goes away. You're always going to be discovering new things. You're always picking up on things that are you're going to analyze to see what is best, that you want to move smoothly throughout the world with, in what's called your light self or etheric mask. When we talk about integrating these things, if you could visualize something like this, if you have a kid who had a father who was maybe a famous football player or basketball player or something, and he had a mentality to always win. He was very competitive, wanted to win all the time. This is not necessarily a negative thing, but when he presents that to his son is seeing symbols of all of his trophies. He could have been a track star, football player, basketball player, doesn't matter. He's seeing these trophies or these ribbons and different things like that have been won, all first place medals, all these things. So his son seeks to go out and be a winner too, just like his father. And he's very competitive. But what happens is he has a competitive nature. Even if he loses, he doesn't understand it as a win because you're learning a lesson from it. He understands it in the sense that I failed my father, I failed myself, and I'm going to react with having a negative attitude towards other people, or being what they call a sore loser because I wasn't able to, in a healthy way, accept a defeat. So this is why your shadow and your light need to be integrated, because this kid has been programmed since he's been a child to always win and not understand that there is winning and actually taking a defeat sometimes. So another example of this would be if you have a kid who was bullied his whole life. So maybe he was bullied by his parents at home, and then he goes to school and he starts bullying people. Then he's only doing that reacting from the trauma or the different things that have been brought into his life, and he only knows how to deal with it by taking that energy and taking it out on somebody else. So this is why I'm talking about with shadow and light integration. It's a constant moving back and forth between these two things to move smoothly throughout life and to be at peace with yourself and with your environment that you're around. So some of us have really deep traumas that you have to go into and analyze, and you got to ask yourself questions about them in order to be able to move forward in the world the way you probably really want to. This is a constant thing that we're always doing. This is a good example. Like when Black people went through slavery, and they were brought here, and they were brought to, you know what I'm saying, the Caribbean, they were brought to South America, all those things. They had to disguise their rituals and traditions under Christianity. They had to disguise it under certain saints, or, certain deities or certain people that were in the Bible. They had to take their people and that were from their traditions and rituals and align it, but it had to come in a mask under these different people. So they didn't necessarily suppress all the way what they were, but they couldn't bring it out to the forefront all the way for their full etheric mask, because at the time they were being oppressed and they would be hurt viciously. They would be killed or whatever it might be if they seen them practicing any of their type of traditions or rituals. This is why Haitians had voodoo that was disguised under the saints within Catholicism or Christianity. This is why so-called Black Americans had hoodoo. They had to disguise these things under these different people that were in the Bible. So that's another example. It's speaking like from the standpoint of seeing a repressed person who's not allowed to express themselves because the environment doesn't allow them to do it. So you also had the Black people who were already in the Americas, and they were called the copper colored people, and they traced back to the etymology of the word America, which really represented the copper colored people who were already here until the Europeans came in and they usurped them and they called themselves the Americans. But, going into where I'm from, which is Oklahoma, specifically Chickasha, Oklahoma, this word comes from Chickasaw, which is the Chickasaw war tribes. Chickasha literally means rebel. So I come from a rebel city. Okay, so when you get into talking to the roots and what's in our DNA, when you have the people of us who are very spiritual and we tie into things like have a shamanic spirit, or we have a ritualistic and traditional spirit where we create these natural traditions and rituals amongst ourselves, even though you might be under some religion and you're not aware of what you're tied to, then this is where you get that from. That spiritual energy is still in your DNA from your ancestors. Your ancestors have that, and that flows through your bloodline. Another example of that is this. This is showing how your shadow or your subconscious, you could be doing things that you're not even aware of. When you have Black people who were slaves at one point within the country, when they go into a church and you see them catch the Holy Ghost, or you see them speaking in tongues, or you see them falling out, you know what I'm saying? When they do catch the Holy Ghost, they falling out on the ground and they, you know what I'm saying, dancing all around. Where do you think that comes from? That is interlocked, or that's locked within their DNA to behave in that way, but the spiritual essence of it is coming from their ancestors or the deities that they dealt with before they got put under the Christianity. You know what I'm saying? But that energy is being sent towards these foreign gods that had nothing to do with them, and in some aspects are just deities that were taken from their ancient cultures and used. So that energy, even though it's being expressed, under Christianity, it's really tied into their ancestral heritage of getting that type of energy and being able to do these things where they do speak in tongues, or they get this what they call the Holy Ghost. They get that high energy, but that's connected to their ancient ancestral heritage. but they're just putting it within Christianity. So that's some things we're talking about with integration of shadow and light. We have to all understand that we all have traumas and things that were repetitive in our lives that caused us or causes us to behave the way we do now, and it's all something we're looking to smooth out along for the ride in life. So that's it.